Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. In Psalm 99, we could say the theme is the holiness of God and the response it demands. And we see time and time again the psalm a mention of the holiness of God. It says in verse 3, holy is he. Verse 5, holy is he. Verse 9, for holy is the Lord our God. And there's various reasons why God is holy found in this psalm. For one, because he reigns. Verse 1, the Lord reigns, let the people tremble. His high position is mentioned. He is enthroned above the cherubim, let the earth shake. He is great. It says in verse 2, the Lord is great in Zion. Because he is exalted. Continuing in verse 2, it says, and he is exalted above all the peoples. Because his name is great and awesome. It says, let them praise, verse 3, your great and awesome name. It says, holy is he. And then because he is strong, it says, the strength of the king loves justice. And also mentioned there is that he is just. He loves justice. You have established equity. You have executed justice and righteousness in Jacob. And then we see he is holy because of because those who serve him are holy. It talks about Moses and Aaron and Samuel, how they had served him. And these are considered very holy people in the eyes of Israel. And yet we see them as keeping God's testimony and the statutes that he gave them. And so these holy people even served him, which more and more attributes to the holiness of God. He is holy because of his kindness. He says in verse 8, you are a forgiving God to them. And then because of his severity as well, as it continues and says, and yet an avenger of their evil deeds. So in this short psalm of 9 verses, we have a list of some 10 things that attribute to God's holiness. Because he reigns, because of his high position, because he is great, because he is exalted, because his name is great and awesome, because he is strong, because he's just, because those who served him were holy, and because of his kindness and because of his severity. And so this psalm presents the holiness of God, but as mentioned, it also then says that this holiness ought to invoke a response by creation. Especially in the early part of this psalm, where it says, the Lord reigns, let the people tremble. So this demands a response of the people trembling, the peoples, plural, that is, the different types of people should all tremble before God because of his holiness. It says he is enthroned above the cherubim, let the earth shake. So the earth itself should shake. Its very foundation should shake in the presence of the holiness of God. And then it goes on to talk about it should result in praise. In verse 3, let them praise your great and awesome name. Holy is he. The holiness of God should result in exaltation. You see this both in verse 5 and in verse 9, where it says, exalt the Lord our God. And again in verse 9, exalt the Lord our God. And then the holiness of God ought to result in worship, of course, in verses 5 and verse 9 as well. And worship at his footstool in verse 5, and then worship at his holy hill in verse 9. So when we think about and reflect on the holiness of God and all the varied reasons why he is so holy, it ought to invoke a response out of us. It's not that we just think that, oh yeah, God's holy. He is definitely a holy God, and we serve a holy God, and then we go on about our business. It ought to evoke a response from our hearts, and it ought to cause us to bow in reverence and fear and in devotion to this God that is so holy. It ought to also provoke us to also live a life of holiness as we bear the name of God in our lives. So let's think about this as we read Psalm 99. Let's focus on the holiness of God, but also the response that the holiness of God demands. And let's let those responses be made evident in our lives, and let it also provoke us into even more and more devotion and love and reverence for God as we walk before him. So here's some things we can reflect on and think about as we do our reading today. With that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.